Hi, everybody. Welcome again to the webinar for More Easily Achieving Regulatory Compliance, Seamlessly Integrated Flow Cytometry Workflows from Data Acquisition to Final Results. My name is Sean Burke from Novo Software, and I'm joined on the call by Caleph B from Miltenyi Biotec. And we're really excited to be guiding you through the call today. So again, as we proceed, make sure to locate that questions and answers box. You can type in your questions as we move along in the webinar here today. So as a little bit of a primer for the webinar today, one thing to keep in mind is that as a project moves from a research into a clinical phase, having instruments and software that are seamlessly integrated is really critical to generating results that are compliant with regulatory agencies. The MACSQuant flow cytometry analyzers and FCS Express data analysis and reporting tools are world-renowned for their abilities in the field of high-quality flow cytometry data acquisition and data analysis. So for the presentations today, Caleph is going to guide us through the use of the MACSQuant analyzers in regulated environments, kind of coming through and also talking about automated functionality to ensure consistency between experiments and instruments. And then we're going to kind of cover some of the intersections between data acquisition and data software analysis packages to help establish CFR 21 Part 11 compliance. In the latter part of the webinar today, we'll be discussing how FCS Express permits direct loading of the MQD file types and allows that compatibility so labs can achieve final results without the need for external software. And also we'll be covering some of the available security and logging tools in FCS Express to help you meet your compliance needs. So with that, we're going to bring Caleph online here to talk a little bit more about the MACSQuant. So let's give him the presentership. And hi, Caleph, welcome to the call.
Hi, Sean. Thank you very much.
Excellent. We'll let you take it away.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for attending this workshop. So we're going to start. I'm Caleph Wilson from Miltenyi Biotech. I'm a senior application scientist. And so we're going to talk a little bit about using the MACSQuant Analyzer. And the title of the talk is Translational Data Acquisition. The MACSQuant Analyzer family of instruments consists of 4 instruments: the MACSQuant X, the MACSQuant Analyzer 16, the MACSQuant Vibe, and the MACSQuant Analyzer 10. Although all 4 of these instruments offer what we call MACSQuant Smart Cytometry. The very first things we want to think about is the instrument has a robust design. So as you start in R&D, scale up for your process development and clinical operations, and also if you're moving into your commercial operations, you will need one of these in your considerations: have an instrument with a footprint that gives you the ability to scale up and maximize the number of instruments that you can have in a given amount of space, save you costs and includes efficiency. The instruments have spatially separated lasers, which make data resolution as well as things like your compensation operate in a more smoother way. And instruments have the 4 instruments have different optical bench parameters, and they can go up to 16 optical parameters. Some of the key features of the instruments that all 4 instruments have are they can do absolute cell counting, they can process multiple tubes or process plates, and we also have our chill rack technology, which allows you to keep your samples cold without using ice and the complications of bringing ice into the GMP environment. The systems also have automation, which makes life a lot easier for your operators, and that transitions from the R&D through the commercial phases. The maintenance for the systems, the startup is automated. There's an automated cleaning process between samples, and at the end, when the system shuts down, there's an automated cleaning process. Your data QC and PMT calibrations are automated, and the sample also has the ability to label. The instrument also has the ability to label your samples as well. And if you have large needs in future thought and connecting to robotic systems, the MACSQuant easily integrates with those systems. From a support perspective, if your data integrity setup allows you to do this, the MACSQuant has a live support function where you can reach out to our tech support team and talk to an application scientist 24/7. You also have we have a dedicated FAS team that's assigned to each MACSQuant that's out in the field. And we also offer in-house training in our San Diego and Gaithersburg facilities. In addition, we will come on site often to work with your personnel to train them, answer questions, and help them understand, the system as much as you need us to do. And we also offer complete service coverage for our instrumentation. So let's talk about some of the values of the MACSQuant, and then I'm going to talk about those values in a bit more detail. But from your QC teams or your R&D teams that are developing, one of the things to keep in mind is that you need to verify that your SOPs were followed. They need to process internal reports and data packages, and the system has ability to help make that process a bit easier. For the QA groups, they need to verify that processes are done in a compliant way, maintain data integrity, and the system has, the MACSQuant platform has the ability to help with those processes as well. From a regulatory standpoint, your regulatory agencies need to verify your reporting documents. They need to understand, they may have questions. And then for us at Miltenyi, we're here to serve as your external SMEs as well as consultants to help you maybe answer some questions that are coming down the pipe from the regulatory agencies if needed. And then from a Miltenyi support process, we have rapid responses. And as I mentioned, our FAS team serve as your external subject matter experts. And then we work with you to be continuous consultants. So as you install the instruments in the R&D phase, we're there to work with you and answer any questions. As you move to process development and clinical phases, where we'll be there also, and as you go commercial. So our dedication is, as you get the instruments and move through your entire program, we're there to work with you and help you as much as possible to make sure you get these things done to have success in your programs. And then the question is, how does the MACSQuant scale with your program? We talked about that a little bit a second ago in the first few slides. So as your program develops from R&D, process development, clinical QC to commercial manufacturing QC, the systems have the ability to allow you to seamlessly integrate the MACSQuants and all of those processes. It will follow, the MACSQuant technology can follow your program, and then you get support as those processes are migrating. A few things that allows it to happen are the automated instrumentation minimizes complexity and decreases errors as you're working through these processes. The harmonization of smart gains enable a seamless scale-up process. And then you can consolidate timelines with validated Miltenyi staining panels if you are at the process where you haven't developed your panel. So we have those to offer as well. And also, in thinking about how we enable those efficiencies, so you may have your internal process development, a partner operation. So as we see with a lot of organizations, you're working with either contract organizations or partner organizations that you're collaborating with. And you need to have a platform that you can seamlessly work between internal groups as well as external groups. As you develop your internal clinical manufacturing processes, the technology of the MACSQuant falls into that, but you also may have partner organizations that are developing clinical manufacturing. So you need a platform that can easily help you make the tech transfer to those operations as well. And as all these come together, you've treated, thousands of patients, and your program is operating successfully. You're going to apply for your commercial manufacturing operations. And so the MACSQuant offers you the ability to make that transition all the way to commercial manufacturing. Part of the way that the MACSQuant does this is the 21 CFR Part 11 data integrity at all levels. So as early as R&D, process development, clinical manufacturing, commercial, you have the ability to have a system that has 21 CFR Part 11 compliance that can give you the controls that you need to make sure that your programs are operating in a way that you're clear on what's going on with the instrumentation and what you're doing. The smart gain technology and your validated methods will migrate with the tech transfers from R&D to process development to your clinical operations to to your commercial manufacturing. You also have, and one key thing we mentioned before is that, and to make this, and to add a bit more detail to that, our field application scientists all have experience working in GLP and GMP environments, that we understand what your considerations are, we understand how you're making decisions, and so we can help you operate in that environment without with more easily. And so the data integrity capabilities of the MACSQuant is that the 21 CFR Part 11 tracing is always on. Once the system is installed and it's IQOQ'd, it tracks every person that has touched the instrument, logged into the system per your controls. You will always know throughout the life of the system. The system always creates a data file. So anytime you begin an acquisition and that acquisition stops, the MACSQuant generates a data file. There's no ability to tell the system when and when not to create a data file. And those are also noted in our the auto report of the system. The system is LDAP capable for user management and define roles to help you set up your data integrity standards. The audit trail provides traceability. It knows who was on the system, when they logged in, what they were doing while it was there, what data they generate, what other processes that they engage in. It gives you that traceability so you know what was going on with your instrumentation, so you can always understand, are things operating in a compliant way. The system also has the ability to generate reports, if you would like, that are PDF type A reports that requires an electronic signature. So you can get reports directly off the system as you migrate your data to FCS Express for analysis. And data files retain information for QA purposes and external and internal audits. So if we look at an MQD file, a MACSQuant data file, you can always determine in the metadata what system that data was generated on, when that data was generated, how that data was set up to be generated, as well as who was logged in. All of this relevant information with the history of the data file, you can always retrieve that from the data file to know exactly what was going on, who was doing what on your system. Now, why smart gains are excellent for your programs. Let's talk a little bit about that. So, smart gains that you've validated with your programs will migrate with them. So let's start off with this picture over here on the right. What we have is smart gains developed in a European with a European group, and that group has shared those settings. So the voltages for the instrument, the setup, and that transitions from there to locations all across the world or internally from your various groups. So you could potentially have a universal setup for global consistency and generate reliable data from test to test, have a uniform setup from user to user, and then consistent data across multiple instruments, as well as seamless intra and inter-site tech transfer. The technology in the MACSQuant and the smart gain technology in the software helps you make a lot of this seamless and operate in a way that makes your life a lot easier for your programs. So let's talk a bit about the uniform setup to smart gains. Well, this is a new tech. This is somewhat of a newer process, and it's not showing how we think about things in flow cytometry. But I'll talk to you through this, and what you'll see is that this makes a lot of sense because once you spend a lot of work developing instrument settings in your R&D setup, you have the ability to transfer that to process development, to your QC groups, as well as to your commercial operations. And one thing before I get into this, there's also additional components of the MACSQuant, like your instrument setting, your instrument experiment setup, and how you're running your samples, how much volume the system mixes, etc., as well as you may have some on-system analysis just to help you understand exactly what's going on with your sample before you move to FCS Express for your full analysis. All of those components can be transferred from one device to the other that gives you the capability to make sure you're seeing things and give you the control that you need to make sure people are your personnel are analyzing their data correctly. Well, not analyzing data correctly, but acquiring data correctly. So what we do is start with the donor instrument. We generate this perfect setting that you love, and you want to make sure that all systems are operating with those settings. Then you can transfer those settings to a recipient instrument. Now, you've optimized those settings on the donor instrument, you transfer it to the recipient instruments, and then what you have the ability to do is execute your methods on all the instruments and verify that all these instruments are indeed actually generating the same data with the same sample, or across samples your data is consistent. All the information included in instrument settings file to ensure equivalent performances. So there are things about the software that it's doing the appropriate analysis in the background to make sure your data and your settings are consistent across your instrumentation. So rather than just talk about this, we're going to show you here some data that we've generated internally at Miltenyi to show you what this looks like. So here on the top left is a donor MACSQuant. And this MACSQuant is looking at CD56 and CD16 on PBMCs. And what we've done is run multiple replicates on this one instrument that we've set up to have the perfect instrument settings. And we look at the overlay of those replicates, they're nice and tight. And then if we move to recipient instrument number 1, running the settings from the donor instrument, the replicates are nice and tight. The same for instrument 2, 3, 4. And now when we take the overlay of the data from the 5 instruments, the donor instrument and the 4 recipients, overlay them and as a representative data, these peaks are nice and tight and they overlay in an excellent way. So this is just a demonstration of generating a donor setting on one MACSQuant and then having the ability to transfer those settings to recipient instruments and getting consistent data and equivalent data across your instruments. And this is a great time-saving operation, as well as from a data integrity perspective. If your teams have created the perfect instrument setting, you love the way that data looks, and then you transfer it to a different instrument, you don't have to worry about the long legwork processes to make sure that you're getting the secondary system or secondary systems set up in the same way as your first system that you tested things on. This saves you a lot of time and puts efficiency into your processes. To have a bit of a review, the 21 CFR Part 11 data integrity is implemented at all levels of operating with the MACSQuant analyzers. The smart games and validated methods will transfer efficiently throughout your operations, through your teams internally, or even to your external operations. You will have dedicated field application scientists with GXP environment experience that serve as external SMEs or subject matter experts, as well as consultants for your team. The system has a small footprint, allowing you to maximize the number of instruments in a given space, which increases your capacity as well as redundancy in your systems. And then reproducibility is built into the system at all levels of your program, as well as all levels of the MACSQuant Analyzer 10. Now, we've taken a lot of time and care to generate these processes to acquire data on a system. Now, the system generates your data in a 21 CFR Part 11 compliant way. It's giving you all the appropriate data integrity compliance needs that you have. And so now you're going to transfer that data through your internal IT network, your internal IT infrastructure, and you're going to transition to FCS Express, which will allow you to now analyze that compliant data in a compliant way and maintain your data integrity for your systems and for your processes. And with that, thank you very much for your attention. And we're going to transition over to Sean, and we're going to take some questions later on, but please make sure you add your questions to the chat window so we can make sure we get to those. Thank you very much.
Excellent, and thank you very much, Caleph. A great little transition here into FCS Express. And as Caleph mentioned, as you have questions that are coming in, keep typing them in. We see them kind of coming through the Q&A panel here, so we'll make sure to come back in the end and address those. So again, to kind of recap here, we're kind of at that handoff from data acquisition to data analysis in FCS Express. And we're going to come in here for about the next 15, 20 minutes and talk a little bit about FCS Express and how FCS Express kind of deals with 21 Part 11 compliance. And we'll even go and jump right into the software itself. Now, before we do, I'll give you a little bit of background of quality for regulated lab environments with FCS Express. Essentially, FCS Express can give you a full secure environment where you can exercise control over the lifetime of your analysis. And FCS Express and Novo Software accomplishes this by allowing customers to add on features to their licenses to help the labs meet CFR Part 11 compliance. Specifically, they're done through two add-ons. One is the security add-on, and one is the logging add-on or audit trail add-on for FCS Express. We're going to come back in and talk about those in more detail. But really importantly is that these add-ons can be available for just about every version of FCS Express. So if you're in the RUO version currently or the IVD version currently, they can be applied to either. I know we have a lot of kind of translational labs that move from RUO product to IVD product, and the kind of common ground there can be these security and logging add-ons to help meet compliance across the transition of the projects. They can be brought into new and existing licenses as well, right? So if you're already an FCS Express customer and you have needs for 21 Part 11 compliance, we encourage you to reach out to our team at Novo Software so we can help you kind of bring you into that. The other really important thing here today is that FCS Express allows direct loading of the Miltenyi.mqd files. So at acquisition, they're going to be stored as .mqd files. Of course, those can be kind of translated into an FCS file for use in any third-party software. But I think it's a really important conversation here today because we do understand that there's a lot of kind of validation, not issues, but concerns or troublesome to kind of go back and forth between MQD files and FCS files. And what we've done by kind of collaborating with the team at Miltenyi is to be able to read those MQD files directly in FCS Express allows folks to work with those files, not have to maintain kind of two different versions of an MQD file and an FCS file to really make that validation process a lot more streamlined and manageable going forward. Now to talk a little bit about FCS Express itself, keep in mind that when you use other software, you're generally taking that, great data from the Miltenyi MACSQuant instruments. You're taking that into, say whatever third-party software, if it's not FCS Express, to kind of generate basic plots and statistics. You're generally having to convert from the MQD file type to the FCS file type, and then you'll have to do things like, take that data and go out to Prism, go out to Excel, go out to Photoshop, go out to PowerPoint to create reports and report items. And there's a lot of, these things come into that to get to a final result. Now, what you're going to see and what we're going to talk about in FCS Express today is that we can take the data from the MACSQuant. We're going to read that MQD file directly. We can bring that into FCS Express. We can work with Excel-like spreadsheets in the software that link up to the MQD files. We can work with kind of regression curves and things that you would do in Prism directly in FCS Express. So what that means is you can use one piece of software to get your final result, which can really, again, help in the validation process because you're not having to do additional validations of moving data from software to Excel and moving data from Excel to Prism. Really, a lot of what you can be doing can be done directly within FCS Express itself, and having one platform for data analysis greatly simplifies a lot of the validation needs. So again, how is FCS Express going to help you meet compliance, right? So FCS Express or Novo Software, we're not going to tell you how to set up your procedures, but we give you the tools to set up compliant procedures by having security and logging. So you have secure logins to the system, control over every action in the program for both individual users and layouts and groups of security users. The data validation and the history and audit trails are there, as well as security policies, electronic signing, kind of things like that. So when I bring all that up, there's a lot of rules for 21 Part 11, right? And in Part 11 specifically, what we have here is just a little highlight of all the rules. And of course, you can visit the Novo Software website. You can grab this matrix and how we meet these rules in FCS Express. But essentially, what we're getting at here is if you enable security and you enable logging, really all of the kind of rules that are outlined here within the security matrix are going to be met with FCS Express directly in the software. And generally it comes up as well, who is using this currently, right? What labs out there, where is this useful in practice to be taking that beautiful data from the Miltenyi instruments and bringing it into FCS Express? Well, we have pharmaceutical researchers, CROs, private research labs, from large research labs to small clinical labs, and even academics, right? So really there's a little bit in here for everybody. And again, every lab has a kind of different way that they, implement their procedures to meet this compliance. But we've worked with, small academic labs up to some of the biggest, most major pharmaceutical research labs in the world. So this is really scalable no matter what level of project or where you're working. Now, again, I want to bring up this compatibility with the Miltenyi datasets directly, right? We do have this special compatibility, right? We can read those MQD files directly. And again, that means there's no need to export to intermediary FCS file types that you kind of have to manage and back validate and things like that. Of course, we can read the FCS files as well, right? So FCS Express can certainly take those files that are created. So if you're already halfway down the line in a project and you don't have the ability to kind of go back and start using the MQD files, you can do that. But really what we're hoping that this can do is close some of your compliance gaps of moving from MQD file types to FCS files. So that way your workflow is very simplified, MACSQuant, MQD files, FCS Express, results, right? Kind of a linear workflow for moving into that. So we are going to jump into the software in just a second, and we are going to cover security and logging here. But just keep in mind with security and FCS Express, what that means is that every user has their own login and password combination. FCS Express can also plug into LDAP and SSO systems. I noticed that Caleph had spoke to integrating with LDAP systems. So if you're already using that on the MACSQuant and then you want to bring that into FCS Express, of course, we can make that possible for you. And security is handled in FCS Express through security groups, which are essentially groups of people that have permissions to do one thing or another in the software. And really every action in the software can be controlled. So you can say that a technician is allowed to move a gate but not delete a plot. A technician is allowed to export a report but not delete a page from an analysis. So this really gives you flexibility to create different levels of access. And we can even bring that and kind of refine it down to the template level in a layout. So that way, if you have a specific layout where you really don't want people changing this, that, and the other thing, even though they might have permissions to do so generally, we can focus at the layout level and say you're not allowed to do this, but you are allowed to do that. And essentially what happens there is both user permissions and layout permissions, they have to both be allowed for a particular action to be performed. But we are going to again come and look at that in just a second here. So with the audit trails, again, these are pretty self-explanatory. The audit trails will recover and show you every single action that was performed on an analysis, who it was performed by. They'll do that at the layout level. So if you move a gate, you get the before and the after of those gating positions of every action that you perform. But we also monitor at the system level with these new system level audit trails that were added to FCS Express in just the last few months here. And what that allows you to do is see which users have been created. You can see if somebody's printed something out but not saved the layout, right? Kind of an important compliance gap there. And of course, there's a lot of additional tools like electronic signatures, administrative features, security configurations, and we also have IQ/OQ available. So if you're interested in learning more about the IQ/OQ, make sure to reach out. We can cover that. So let's actually go to FCS Express to review some of these features and functionality. So what I'm going to do here, let me kind of hop out of PowerPoint and I'm going to launch up FCS Express so we can take a look at some of these features and functionality here today. And when I launch up FCS Express, what you're going to see is the first kind of security feature here is that it's going to prompt me to log in, right? It seems like a simple thing, and it is, right? But FCS Express allows you to define a whole bunch of usernames, passwords, whatever it is that you need to be working with there. And I'm going to launch right into an analysis template that we've created here. Now, in this analysis template, one thing I'm going to pull up is that we have the data list here in FCS Express, and you can see that we've loaded up the MQD file type directly, right? So as I navigate through all of the different data files in this particular analysis, these are all the direct MQD file exports from the Miltenyi MACSQuant instrument, right? So there was no need to kind of come in and recreate these as FCS files. Now in FCS Express, you can see here when I'm logged in as an administrator, I can move gates, I can move markers, I can kind of do all the stuff that I would normally be doing for my analysis, at a kind of higher level here. But what we allow you to do in FCS Express is, of course, there can be lots of different kind of ways to secure this analysis. And we accomplish this all in the File tab security. So one is we have our user administration, right? You can come in here and add and edit and create whatever users that you want. And for every user that's in the system, they can be assigned to a particular security group. So you can see my other user here, Sean Burke, is part of this technician security group. And what does that mean, right? So if we come back into our security tab here and we take a look at our security groups, you can see that we have an administrator, which has all rights to do every sort of action in the software, but we also have this technician, right? And the technicians, they're not allowed to, you can see here, delete pages. Technicians are not allowed to create new gates. They're not allowed to modify markers. And what you can see from this very long list here is that really every sort of action that you can perform in FCS Express can be allowed or disallowed or locked down any way that you want. So what I'm going to do here is log out of this particular layout or log out of FCS Express, and we'll get logged back in here as the technician. So myself, Sean Burke, is going to be logged in as a technician now, and we're going to load up the layout that we're going to work with here. So let me pull this in. And again, this is the exact same layout that we were working in here as an administrator before. But what I want to point out here is that the security groups are not going to allow us to do things like create a gate, right? So it says the operation is not allowed for the current users because I don't have permissions to do that. The other permission we blocked, we're not allowed to move that marker, right? The technician is not allowed to come in here and delete a page. So you can see how FCS Express handles all of these different kind of situations in here. Now, the other thing that we can do in FCS Express is that we can set up layout status definitions. And really what these do is block you from doing certain things in a layout itself, right? So, maybe in this particular layout, we don't ever want somebody coming in and trying to create quadrants. So, this user is allowed to create quadrants, but they're not allowed to create it in this particular layout. So you can really get kind of fine grain in the types of actions and things that you can perform in the software. Now you probably also notice in the bottom here, we have the signature table and it says, the status is never signed. Well, electronic signatures in FCS Express are available. Really all we do is we come up to the info tab here and we come in and we say sign this document. And what will happen is when I try and sign this document, we're going to be prompted to enter our username and password. We'll log in, and you can see that the technician Sean Burke has signed this and the date and the time that it was signed. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save this real quickly, and I'm going to say that we signed this document and put that on the desktop, because what I'm going to do here is log out again, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you about how we work with multiple signatures in this layout. So again, we're gonna load back in here as our administrator, and this is again somebody who can perform all actions in the software. And you can see that again, Sean Burke has already signed this document. And if the administrator wants to come in here, give a signature in here, we'll do one more signature and we'll do admin and password. And what you're going to see is now the admin has signed the document. So when this layout is saved and it's ready for use, or ready for review at any time, keep in mind that we can always come back in here and look at this history, right? So this is the logging. This is the audit trails portion of FCS Express. And you can see back to, when this layout was created many years ago, up until today's date, we have a full audit trail. We have the signatures that are stamped with this. We have gate moves. We have the markers being added or deleted. We have pages trying to be deleted. We have, data files being added to this. So these audit trails are here. They're going to cover everything that you do in the software. They can be printed and they can be saved. So of course you can come in here and access this. Now, I think one of the other things that I just wanted to point out very quickly before we move on to just kind of one more example here is that in the security tab, there's something here called the security configuration. And this is where we're going to allow you to control things like password policies. So if you need to change the number of days before passwords need to be changed, failed login attempts, prohibit passwords from being reused, all of that information can be set up, it can be configured, and you have this ready to go for your system as a whole. So this is really great. Again, what we're showing you here is just kind of one data file at a time, but we do understand that when you're working with MQD files, when you're working with Miltenyi instruments, a lot of times you want to take that a little bit further, right? You want to take that data, you put together some sort of IC50 curve, you put together something like an antibody titration, and you want to be able to plot that data, graph that data, get information from that, and then that will be your final result. So what we've done here in FCS Express is we have that same data file or that same data set loaded here. But what you'll kind of see is as I move through that data, it's an antibody titration, right? And really all we're doing here, it's a very simple CD8 antibody titration. But this is just as well could be an IC50 dose response curve, right? It could be really anything that you want. Now, when you're working with other software, you generally have to take that data, move out to Excel to graph it, right? Or move out to Prism. And what we do in FCS Express is we can make use of these spreadsheets. And I'll make this spreadsheet a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. But we can make use of these spreadsheets directly in the software that link up to the gates in the data files, right? So let me get this in a place that we can see it. What you'll notice is that as I move this gate for CD8 positives, everything in that spreadsheets, all of the medians, MFI values, even our calculated stain index value here from an Excel-like formula, all of that information updates in real time, right? And because that information is plotted in the spreadsheet, it's also plotted over here in a graph, right? We've actually regressed this data to come up with an antibody titration curve. And you can see that that regressed data also updates in real time as you move that gate around. So really what this enables users is within one software package to get to a final result, right? And in this case, for an antibody titration, a final result is this: how much antibody to go back and use when you're ready to perform the real experiment, right? If you're doing dose response, if you're doing titrations and things like that, the final result is the EC-IC50s, right? And we can report that directly in the software. And again, as you change data, as you move gates, you get live updating information of what that final result is. So really what we're hoping to allow you to do in FCS Express here is do all of the downstream analysis, right? Take those IC-EC50 calculations and dose response curves, move them into an analysis in FCS Express. So you're working with your MQD file, you bring it into FCS Express for analysis in your secured logging environment, you perform all the analysis you need to do, and you even get that final result before you're ready to export and save that data for posterity. So with that, I kind of wanted to come back and summarize a little bit of what we talked about today during the webinar on the FCS Express side of things. So in FCS Express, keep in mind that we're offering this kind of comprehensive security and logging system to support CFR 21 Part 11 compliance, when you come from your instrument to FCS Express. And in particular, we have that direct compatibility with the MACSQuant MQD files. And hopefully that will help you lower some compliance burdens by allowing you to not have to work with MQD and FCS files. You can take that data right off the instrument, move it into FCS Express, and get going with that. We have the security groups, the layout status definitions that allow you to really fine grain who has access to what permissions, what features in the software, to allow them, differential levels of access. You can utilize electronic signatures in the software. We have the audit trails capturing the detailed information for every action performed, either in the layout or the system level. And FCS Express can be configured to fit your needs, right? So, depending if you need logging or audit trails or both, one of the other, if you have LDAP systems, if you're using SQL databases, FCS Express can really plug into all of that sort of infrastructure as you need. And of course, if you need to validate FCS Express, you don't have to write your own IQOQ. We do have that available, that documentation available for purchase if you need. So with that, I wanted to say thank you for attending the webinar today. On behalf of Miltenyi Biotech and Novo Software, thanks for joining us. As you have questions that are coming in, make sure you start typing those now. We're going to come in and answer some questions in just a few minutes, and I do see that we had a number of questions that came in during the webinar here, so we'll be addressing those. But if you have questions after the webinar, make sure to contact us. Make sure to contact Miltenyi Biotech at max@miltenyibiotech.com. If you have questions for Novo Software, reach out to us at support@Novo Software. And with that, I also wanted to give a big thank you to the team at Miltenyi and Caleph in particular for making this webinar happen today. We're really excited to see so many people on the call, and we're looking forward to taking your questions in just a moment here. So thanks again, and we'll be taking questions and answers in just one moment. All right, and so we've got a few questions and answers, or a few questions, and we've actually answered a few things already that have come through. So Caleph, are you able to unmute yourself on that side? We can start a little bit of a discussion here. While you take yourself off of mute, I can address a few questions that came in about FCS Express. So one question that came in here was, what's the cost of the software? Does it require a dongle, and how do I get a quote? So excellent question. And that one's for FCS Express, so I'll take that one there. I'm sure we might have something similar for MaxQuantify and MaxQuant as well. So if you need some information about pricing on FCS Express, what you can do is contact us up here at support@denovosoftware.com. So kind of as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we offer the security add-on, we offer the logging add-on, we offer the flow cytometry RUO, we offer the IVD version. So costs are really going to depend on the needs of your lab and how many users you have, what type of validation do you need, and things like that. So really, you have to get in touch with us. We put together customized quotes for every company and lab that reaches out about FCS Express because there is a lot of variability. Of course, we're not going to charge the lab with 10 users the same amount as a lab that has 1,000 users. Another question here was about a dongle. So when you're using the FCS Express version with security and logging, generally you're required to use the network version of FCS Express, which runs off of your own network. It means that you don't need a physical dongle key to plug into the computer. What happens is FCS Express gets installed on a server location, and anybody who's connected within your intranet on your network can access FCS Express. And another question that came in here about FCS Express, and it might be kind of a joint question for Miltenyi. It says, does FCS Express retain the name of the samples I created under MaxQuant? So what FCS Express will do is FCS Express will read any metadata associated with an FCS file or an MQD file, or really any of the file types that we can load into the software. So as long as the MQD files were created and you've created a sample name or included some sort of metadata at the time of acquisition, FCS Express can read that in directly, and it means that there's no kind of typing in later, there's no copy and paste, and that can really reduce a lot of clerical errors, which is a good thing. And yeah, and part two of the pricing question there is for you, Caleph. One kind of question that came in is, if you have an RUO max quantify, can that be upgraded to part 11? And if I do upgrade it, can I, install that myself? And what are some of the costs associated with that, or who do I reach out to get some information about those costs? So do we have you there, Caleph, to address that one?
Yes, I'm here.
Excellent.
So first off, as an application scientist, I'm not sure about the pricing, so that's something that we can always get the information for you. However, if you currently have a device that is RUO, presumably what you would want to do is order an IQOQ and then have the software upgraded to the 21 CFR Part 11 version. That's something that we have the capability of doing. And also, and that would be something that both of those will be done via our service team at Miltenyi.
Excellent. And here's a question I was thinking of, Caleph, maybe to spur some discussion here as well. So I noticed with the Spark Gain systems, you have this kind of concept of recipient and donor instruments. So I mean, say if you have a donor instrument located in some central location, and then another lab is kind of working on a recipient instrument, and they define some sort of setting that seems to be improved upon. Can the recipient computer be then set as the donor, or can different recipient kind of instruments and systems upload their data to the donor system to kind of change that around if need be?
So the way I'm interpreting that question is that you've created your settings on your donor instrument, and from there, there's, let's say, a group in another department, and they're working on their settings, and they've made some improvements. So from that point, if you've improved the settings, then you do have the ability to take those settings back to the donor instrument. So the donor designation is just designed to identify the unit that maybe the R&D group was working on, or some other group, and they decided that these settings are absolutely perfect for us. However, once the settings are transferred somewhere else, if there's some additional validation, additional work done that you find that creates some improvement, you do have the ability to adjust the settings, save them, and then now the settings from that instrument D will become the donor instrument that can also go back to the original instrument and install those settings there as well. So you have the flexibility of working bi-directional in a way, but multi-directional.
Excellent, and that's just what I had in mind, or just what I've seen. Some labs that I've worked with on the FCS Express side, they want to move settings around because somebody found something that works a little better. Here's another question that came in about the file compatibility, and actually there was kind of a few of these that came in, and one was about FCS Express. Can it read the MQD files and the FCS files? Can it read the MQD files automatically? Can you convert MQD files into FCS files within FCS Express itself? So just a few of the questions. I thought I'd kind of sort of a little discussion around that. So what FCS Express will do is, if you've created the MQD files, we'll just load them directly. You drag and drop them into the data list, and then drag and drop the data files into FCS Express, and they open up. If you are familiar with FCS Express and you're familiar with the load data dialog, you have an option to choose different file types. So if you're choosing in that dialog, you can just choose the MQD file type. But of course, FCS Express will read FCS files or MQD files. So, if you're kind of halfway through your project and you want to get started in FCS Express and you have FCS files, don't worry. If you've already converted them from MQD to FCS, we'll read them. Now, FCS Express will also generally convert just about any file type from one file type to another. So if you've loaded in MQD files into FCS Express, and then you've decided that you need to get an FCS file out of that, there are tools in FCS Express to accomplish that, where we can export an MQD file as an FCS file. But generally, yeah, I don't see most folks doing that, right? The reason that they want to be working with MQD files in FCS Express is so that they don't have to generate some sort of intermediary file type that also needs to be, kind of validated along the way against the MQD file. So of course, there's a lot of flexibility that's there to do these sort of things, but you can just load those MQD files directly. And I think we have time for just kind of one more question here, which I'll shoot over to Caleph here. Maybe I can address it a little bit as well. But what kind of training and resources does Miltenyi have for both instrument and software? And I mean, say you already have the software and you've added, 10 more users, or you've bought 5 new MACSQuant instruments. Do you have the availability, or is it available to kind of train new users as they come online?
Absolutely. So that's a great question. So once the system's installed, we do have on-site training as well as training in our facilities in San Diego and Gaithersburg. However, if you can imagine, programs growing over time, new personnel come in, or maybe people move departments and get promotions, etc. And we're always available to work with you to train the new personnel on the instrument itself, as well as if there are questions about how to operate the software. This new virtual environment we have, it makes it a lot easier, right? We can always schedule some time to work together and walk through questions that you have on the software itself. And if also, the other great thing is, if your instrument is connected to the internet, you do have the ability to connect to our live support, and one of our application scientists and our tech support team will respond to you. Or if, for instance, if you're a customer in my territory, and this is the same for any territory, we would be able to schedule a live support session and work with you while you're in front of the instrument. So you're walking through whatever process you have going on so we can see it in real time. So overall, we are always excited to continuously work with customers to get them and help them get the most return on their investment on the MACSQuant device.
Excellent. And, of course, I think I can say the same thing about FCS Express here, is that if you need training, if you need resources, we have a ton of this stuff on our website. If you need specific resources and folks to come out and help train, either on-site or virtually, you can contact us at support@denovosoftware.com, and we'll be happy to arrange that. So, of course, if you already own a Miltenyi instrument, I'm sure you know who your best point of contact is. If you don't, you can reach out to the team at Miltenyi via the email address that's listed up here, max@miltenyibiotech.com, or the phone number listed. And again, you can reach out to the team at Novo Software at support@denovosoftware.com, and the phone number listed up there. So with that, I think we've covered just about all the questions here today that have come through. If you have any after the call, don't hesitate to reach out to either of the teams. And again, I wanted to say a big thank you to the team at Miltenyi Biotech, especially for Caleph giving an excellent presentation today and taking the time out to put together a presentation and speak to our joint customers that are out there. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great day, and thanks for joining the webinar. Take care. Bye-bye.